bought by the billionaire. But she owned him. Part 1. Chapter 1, The Debt. The rain fell in sheets, soaking the edges of Mila Grayson's hoodie as she crouched behind the alley dumpster, counting the last of her tips from the graveyard shift. Crumpled ones, greasy fives, and a single $10 bill, $42 in total. Just enough for her mother's medication refill if she skipped dinner. Again. Her fingers shook, whether from cold or exhaustion, she couldn't tell anymore. Inside her pocket, her phone buzzed. Final notice, payment of $23,451.12 is past due. Account sent to collections. This is your final warning. Mila closed her eyes, letting the screen's glow burn behind her lids. Final warning had become her life's anthem. From medical bills to overdue rent, from eviction threats to collection calls. Her mother's illness wasn't going away, and neither was the mountain of debt that came with it. She pushed herself up, brushing the damp from her jeans, and walked the 4 blocks to the rundown apartment they called home. The building always smelled of mildew and stale cigarettes. Tonight, it reeked of despair. Inside, her mother lay on the couch, her breathing shallow, her skin pale. The heating had been shut off 3 days ago. Mila quietly draped another blanket over her and kissed her forehead. Her mother stirred, murmuring her name, then fell back asleep. The world expected her to choose, survive or save her mother. She wasn't willing to pick. The next morning, Mila found it in a cracked forum online, half hidden behind a paywall of encrypted access and rumor, the Paragon auction. A whispered urban legend among the desperate, the daring, and the beautiful. A charity auction where billionaires bid, not for art or yachts, but for people. Contracts. Favors. Silent deals. The rules were brutal. The payout. Unimaginable. At first, she laughed bitterly. Was this how far she'd fallen? But when she looked down at her mother's face, sweating from fever, trembling in her sleep, Mila knew the answer. She filled out the form that night. Age, 25. Skills, fluent in French. Trained in classical ballet. Street smart. Assets, photogenic. Educated. Desperate. Motivation, I need money. Fast. 3 hours later, she received a text. Accepted. Midnight. Come alone. Wear black. The limousine was sleek, blacker than the night that swallowed it. Mila's fingers tightened around the strap of her bag as the driver opened the door. Her thrift store heels wobbled slightly as she stepped onto the marbled floor of the Paragon Club, private, elite, and hidden above the glittering skyline of Manhattan. Inside, it felt like a dream painted in gold. Champagne flowed like water. Crystal chandeliers hung like icy galaxies above masked men in tuxedos and women draped in diamonds. But all eyes shifted toward the stage as the auction began. Lot 7. A model from Russia. Lot 8. A pianist from Seoul. Lot 9. A hedge fund widow. Then the spotlight hit her. Lot 10. Mila Grayson. She walked onto the stage as if her knees weren't shaking, as if her stomach wasn't twisting into knots. As if she weren't selling the only thing she had left, herself. The host began the bidding. Starting at 1 million. A paddle rose. 1.5. 2 million. Mila didn't look at the crowd. Her eyes locked forward, staring into nothing. Then it came. 5 million. Silence. Heads turned. Murmurs rippled like wind over water. The man who had spoken was in the shadows. He didn't wear a mask. He didn't smile. And when he stepped forward, Mila's heart stopped. Lucien Ray, CEO of Ray International. The youngest billionaire in New York. Ruthless. Untouchable. Icy as the glaciers of his native Switzerland. His nickname in every scandal-ridden tabloid, the Ice King. The host cleared his throat. 5 million. Final offer. Slam. The gavel fell. Mila didn't breathe. She didn't move. She didn't feel real. A man had just bought her. Not for pleasure. Not for sex. But for something colder. Lucien Ray approached her like a man examining merchandise, his gaze sliding over her features without a flicker of emotion. Then he leaned in, his voice barely above a whisper, as sharp and precise as a blade. I don't want a mistress, Miss Grayson. I want a contract fiancée. No touching. No feelings. Just obedience. Do we understand each other? Mila met his eyes. Something ancient and fierce sparked behind her calm. She nodded. Crystal. But what Lucien Ray didn't know was that she had walked into this auction not just to save a life. She had walked in to destroy his. Chapter 2, The Ice King. The town car was silent as a tomb. Mila sat stiffly in the back seat, wrapped in black velvet like a lamb being chauffeured to its own slaughter. Across from her, Lucien Ray did not speak. He barely moved. His angular profile was lit faintly by passing streetlights, but it was hard to tell if he was flesh or steel. He was silent, cold, and stunning in that untouchable, soul-swallowing way. His tailored suit clung to him like a second skin, and his posture radiated power, unbent, unmoved, and unimpressed. Mila had never met a man who felt more like a locked vault. The only sound was the occasional buzz of his phone, which he read with unreadable eyes and then dismissed. As though billion-dollar deals were mere chores. She cleared her throat. So, this contract fiancé thing. That's real. Lucien turned his head toward her, slowly. His stare wasn't unkind, but it wasn't human, either. It was clinical, like a surgeon preparing to cut. Do you imagine I paid $5 million for something vague? Mila resisted the urge to shrink into the seat. I figured you'd at least take me to dinner first. His lips twitched. It might have been a smirk. Or maybe it was just the flicker of amusement at watching someone try to talk to a glacier. I don't date, he said. I don't court. I don't seduce. She arched a brow. Clearly. I require a fiancé immediately. For appearances only. My board is threatening a merger. My reputation, while formidable, is not domestic. They want to see me stable. Settled. Predictable. And I'm supposed to make you look cuddly. Precisely. It wasn't a joke. Lucien Ray didn't joke. Mila stared at him. And this contract, how long are we pretending to be soulmates? 6 months. You will accompany me to galas, business functions, and family events. You will dress appropriately. Smile when needed. No scandals. No complications. No sex. He blinked once. Absolutely not. She frowned. You sound offended. I have no interest in intimacy with strangers. Emotional, physical, or otherwise. Mila leaned back, eyeing him. You know, most people just hire PR firms. Lucien didn't even blink. I don't trust most people. But I do trust contracts. The car pulled up to an underground parking structure. Sleek and private. A building that screamed money from every marble tile. Mila followed him into the elevator. The silence felt like pressure against her chest. Finally, she said, "You didn't even read my file." "I read enough," he said, pressing the button to the penthouse. "You're healthy, literate, have no criminal record, and scored a 1,340 on your SATs. You're resourceful, loyal to your family, and too broke to say no." She opened her mouth, and shut it again. Damn. He wasn't wrong. "But here's what I don't understand," he added. "You could have sold yourself to someone who wanted you for more traditional reasons. Why take my offer?" "Because I don't want to be someone's toy," she said coolly. "I want control." Lucien's head tilted slightly, as though she had said something unexpected. "I see," he murmured. "Then we may get along after all." The elevator doors opened to a private hallway of black marble and silver trim. No neighbors. No noise. Just the chill of excessive luxury. He led her into the penthouse. It was minimalistic and stark, decorated in gunmetal gray, matte black, and winter white. Cold art. Glass walls. Not a single photo. It looked like a museum, one that banned emotions at the door. "You'll sleep in the East Suite," Lucien said. "The wardrobe has already been updated in your size. A driver will be available at all hours. You'll begin etiquette sessions tomorrow with my staff. You'll memorize our history as a couple. There will be scripts for interviews. A public proposal is scheduled for next month." Mila wandered slowly toward the floor-to-ceiling windows. The city stretched out like a glittering kingdom below them. She was high above her old world, literally and metaphorically, and yet, the cold here felt more dangerous. "You know," she said, "for someone who hates emotion, you sure did pick the most romantic lie in the book." Lucien's voice was close behind her. "It's not a lie. It's a strategy. And what happens when the press gets curious? They'll eat what I feed them. I control the narrative, Miss Grayson." She turned to face him, arms crossed. "And what do I get?" Lucien's eyes glittered like sharpened ice. "Your mother's medical debt is now cleared. You'll receive a monthly stipend. Discretion bonuses. And upon successful termination of this arrangement, one lump sum, tax-free, of $500,000. Mila swallowed hard. That money could change everything. Lucien extended a folder toward her. "The contract. You may take the night to review it. Sign it by 9 a.m. Or don't. But understand, if you do sign, there is no deviation. No sentimentality. No betrayal." She took the folder. He turned, already walking away. "Oh," he added, just before disappearing down the hall, "and Miss Grayson. Yes. You'll find I'm not a man who warms up." The door closed behind him. Mila stood alone in a penthouse of ice, holding the keys to her future, or her doom. But as she turned the first page of the contract, her lips curved into a smile. He thought he was buying obedience. But he just bought a storm. Chapter 3, Terms and Conditions. The pages were crisp, printed on paper thicker than the rent notices that used to haunt her mailbox. Mila sat on the edge of the velvet chaise in the east wing of Lucien Ray's penthouse, the contract folder spread open across a glass table that reflected the city skyline like a mirage. It was nearly 3 a.m., but her eyes were wide, sharp. She'd read the entire document twice already. This wasn't a contract, it was a cage built with cold perfection. Section I, Duration. Term of agreement, 6 calendar months, beginning from the signing date. Early termination by either party will result in forfeiture of all financial compensations. 6 months of pretending. Of smiling on red carpets, dancing at galas, and sitting at Lucian's side like a perfect, mute ornament. Section 2, Roles and Appearances. Mila Grayson shall appear in all public events designated by Mr. Ray. She shall wear attire pre-approved by his appointed stylist. She shall not disclose private arrangements under any circumstances, including under oath, press interrogation, or intoxication. There was even a clause prohibiting her from chewing gum in public. Section 3, Emotional Boundaries. The relationship shall remain non-intimate. No sexual activity shall occur unless renegotiated in writing. Mila Grayson shall not engage in romantic entanglements outside of the contract. Emotional attachment is discouraged, and any evidence of such may be considered breach of agreement. She snorted at that one. Emotional attachment is discouraged. Lucian had written this like he was outsourcing a heart transplant. Section 4, Privacy. All rooms in the penthouse, excluding Lucian Ray's private office and bedroom, shall be accessible to Mila Grayson. Surveillance is active in common areas for security purposes. Digital activity will be monitored to prevent leaks or violations. Translation: he trusted her about as far as he could throw her. Which, ironically, made him predictable. Section V, Final Compensation. Upon completion of the full 6-month term and fulfillment of all obligations, Mila Grayson shall receive immediate clearance of existing medical debt, already executed. Monthly living allowance, $20,000. Exit bonus, $500,000, tax-free. Her fingers traced the final line. Signature of agreement, Mila E. Grayson. But she didn't sign it. Not yet. Instead, she rose and crossed to the window, staring down at the sleeping city. Far below, taxi lights blinked like restless stars. Somewhere, in a hospital bed in Queens, her mother was asleep, unaware that her daughter had just agreed to become an accessory in a Billionaires charade. Mila pressed her hand to the cool glass. The air up here didn't feel like air. It felt sterile, filtered, like everything Lucian touched, scrubbed of anything raw, anything real. She glanced at the black duffel bag she'd carried into this place. Most of it was filled with cosmetics, borrowed heels, and a silk nightgown she hadn't dared change into. But deep in the lining, stitched into a hidden zipper, was a flash drive. Lucian Ray didn't know it, but she hadn't come here to smile for cameras. She'd come with a plan. And a purpose. And revenge, real, burning revenge, required precision. Mila sat back down, pulled the gold pen from the folder pocket, and clicked it once. Then, with a steady hand and not a hint of hesitation, she signed her name. When morning came, she was dressed in an ivory silk blouse and tailored black pants, both hanging like armor on her frame. Her hair was pulled into a low chignon, sleek and effortless. The stylist hadn't arrived yet, but Mila had never needed someone to tell her how to look expensive. She just needed the right enemy. Lucian entered the dining room exactly at 9 a.m., dressed in a charcoal suit that likely cost more than her childhood home. He glanced at the signed contract resting beside her untouched cappuccino. "You read it thoroughly." "Every syllable," she replied, sipping. You understand the consequences of breaching it. Crystal clear. He nodded once, sliding the folder under his arm like the transaction had been completed. Like she was just another asset folded into his empire. I've scheduled your etiquette lessons with Madame Elodie for this afternoon, he said. You'll also receive a briefing on my public history, favorite restaurants, and fictional anecdotes about our relationship. By Friday, the press will believe we've been together for nearly a year. Should I memorize your blood type, too? Lucien's mouth twitched in what might have been amusement. Only if you plan on stabbing me. Not yet, she thought. Instead, she smiled sweetly. I wouldn't dream of it. As Lucien turned and strode out of the room, Mila finally let her smile slip. He had no idea what he had let in. He thought she was a desperate girl with a sob story and good cheekbones. But he didn't know her real story. He didn't know who she was before Mila Grayson. And he didn't know her sister. Not yet. Chapter 4, The Penthouse Prison. It didn't take long for the illusion of luxury to rot. By day 3, Mila Grayson knew the truth. The penthouse wasn't a palace, it was a prison made of marble and glass. She stood barefoot on the heated floors of the East Wing, her hand pressed against the sleek, cold window that overlooked all of Manhattan. But no matter how far the skyline stretched, it couldn't distract her from the suffocating silence within. The space was too perfect, like a museum no one lived in. No fingerprints, no clutter, no life. Just minimalist furniture, metallic art, and fresh orchids that arrived every Monday, as if hired to impersonate warmth. The kitchen sparkled, but she never saw Lucien cook, or eat. The bookshelves were lined with first editions and untouched philosophy tomes. There was a piano in the corner, polished to a mirror-like shine. Mila lifted the lid once, let her fingers brush a single key. A C note echoed like a scream in a crypt. She didn't touch it again. Lucien was always working. Always gone. His absence wasn't felt, it was enforced. Even when he was home, he moved like a shadow, passing her with cold nods and clipped commands. On the fourth day, she tried to ask a question during breakfast, an innocent, almost polite "What's your board actually like?" And he looked at her like she'd asked for a key to his chest cavity. Do not confuse proximity with intimacy, he said, without even looking up from his phone. That was the end of that. The rules were implicit, unspoken but absolute. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't pry. Don't be late. Don't touch the door to his office. Ever. So she obeyed. For now. She memorized his public profile, where they met, how long they'd dated, and what his favorite color was, gray, of course. She practiced smiling with poise, drinking champagne without flinching, walking in stilettos that cost more than her rent had ever been. Madame Elodie corrected her posture like a drill sergeant with pearls. But behind Mila's perfect performance, her mind was always working. She noted which drawer held his spare keycard. She memorized the access codes he used for the elevator. She observed the patterns, when he left, how long he stayed gone, which nights he took late calls in French. She was building a map of the enemy's territory. And Lucien. He didn't suspect a thing. Because Lucien Ray didn't feel. He calculated. He dismissed. He commanded. And it was that very arrogance that kept him blind to her true purpose. One evening, after a gala rehearsal with Elodie, Mila wandered into the main lounge. Lucien stood at the far end, staring out over the balcony with a tumbler of something amber in hand. His jacket was off, sleeves rolled, and Mila had the sudden, ridiculous thought that he looked almost human like that. Almost tired. She approached quietly. Not sneaking, just careful. You look like you're about to fire someone, she said lightly. I did, he replied without turning. They deserved it. Charming. You know, she said, stepping beside him, most people don't need a fiancé to seem human. They just try being. I don't know. Nice. Lucien finally looked at her, his gaze colder than the drink in his glass. Nice is a liability in my world. Maybe your world needs a redesign. He studied her. Slowly. Like he was trying to decide if she was worth answering. I didn't bring you here to fix my world, he said. I brought you here to fit into it. Mila gave him a bright, practiced smile. And I'm doing exactly that. Aren't I? A long pause passed between them. Then he nodded, satisfied, and walked away. But in that moment, Mila understood something she hadn't before. Lucien wasn't just cold. He was armored. He wasn't a man, he was a fortress made of silence and sharp edges. Everything about him had been engineered to keep people out. The money. The rules. The detachment. Even the design of his home, beautiful, lifeless, untouchable. Mila turned back toward the window, the city glittering below like a lie whispered through diamonds. She was inside his fortress now. All she had to do was find the cracks. Chapter 5, The Masked Ball. The invitation had arrived in an envelope thick as ivory and sealed with black wax. The Archer Foundation Annual Masquerade, an event infamous for glittering masks, shadowy billionaires, and more whispered scandals than any tabloid could print. Lucien didn't blink when Mila read the RSVP aloud. We'll go, he said. They're expecting us. Us. Mila stood in the penthouse dressing sweet as a team of stylists worked around her like an ass carpet crew. Pins clinked, steam hissed, zippers zipped. The gown selected for her was couture, midnight blue silk that poured down her body like water, slit high at the thigh, and corseted tight enough to drain secrets out of a person. Her mask was velvet and silver, trimmed in crystals, designed to conceal and highlight all at once. You look like royalty, one stylist whispered in awe. Mila only smiled in the mirror. She didn't feel like royalty. She felt like a weapon being sharpened. The ball was held at the Wexford estate, a Gothic palace wrapped in ivy and dripping with chandeliers. Doormen in tuxedos stood like statues. The media flooded the courtyard like sharks scenting blood. Lucien's black Maserati rolled up, silent and predatory. The moment they stepped out, flashbulbs exploded like lightning. Lucien. Who's the mystery woman? Is that your fiancé? Name, please. Smile for Vogue. Lucien didn't smile. He offered his arm to Mila, and she took it with the grace of someone born for spotlights, even if she'd grown up dodging them. Their every step was analyzed, recorded, catalogued. The whispers began the moment they entered the ballroom. That's her. She's gorgeous. Where did he find her? He never brings dates. Ever. The ballroom was a sea of masks and secrets, tuxedos, gowns, and chandeliers like frost-covered stars. The air smelled of white roses and power. Lucien moved like he owned the world. Mila moved like she'd steal it from under him. Hours passed in a blur of champagne flutes and hollow conversation. Every time someone greeted them, Lucien's arm would tighten around her waist for a beat, just enough to suggest intimacy, to convince the crowd. She leaned into him when the photographers passed, tilted her head just so, smiled like she was in love. The performance was flawless. Until her opportunity came. "I need to powder my nose," Mila said with a sugary lilt. "Don't get too lonely without me." Lucien raised a brow but said nothing. She turned toward the back corridor, heels clicking with perfect poise, until she passed the guest restroom and ducked down a side hallway. She wasn't looking for a mirror. She was looking for a ghost. She'd seen the building blueprints online, buried in an old architectural archive. She knew the Archer estate had an old executive office on the second floor, rarely used now, but still connected to the Foundation's digital archives. Lucien had spoken at this ball last year. It was possible, she figured, that the speech had been written, or stored, on the Foundation's secure drive. And if her guess was right, he might have saved it from the same device used for internal communications at Ray International. The office was locked, but Mila had learned a thing or two growing up around padlocks and pawn shops. She slid a hairpin from her chignon, jiggled the latch just so, and the door clicked open. The room was dark, paneled in mahogany and dust. A single monitor hummed from the far desk. "Password protected." Mila smiled. "Password attempt #1, Lucien Ray." Fail. #2, Ice King. Fail. #3, Ilera. Access granted. Her breath hitched. The name. Her sister's name. Why would she didn't have time to process. Just act. She plugged the flash drive into the port, copying everything she could. Folder after folder populated the screen. Internal memos. Whistleblower reports. 2022 merger conflicts. Project Ilera. Mila's heart stopped. She dragged the last folder onto the drive. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. She yanked the drive free, shoved it back into the silk lining of her glove, and slipped out the side door just as the office lock clicked again from the other side. She didn't see who entered. She didn't need to. Back in the ballroom, Lucien was watching the crowd with that distant, predatory stillness he always wore. He didn't even flinch when Mila returned, flushed from adrenaline and half breathless. He turned toward her and held out his hand. "Dance with me." Not a question. A command. She nodded, masking her thundering heart, and stepped into his arms. They glided across the floor like royalty, flawless and cold. Her body pressed against his as the violins swelled. She couldn't tell if it was real or staged anymore. Couldn't decide if the tension between them was part of the script, or something rising from the cracks they were both trying to seal shut. "You were gone a while," Lucien murmured into her ear. "Powder room line," she said sweetly. "Women's suffering, you know." He didn't smile. But he didn't press. Mila smiled for the cameras. Held his gaze. And danced with the man she was going to bring to his knees. Because every broken heart deserves a comeback. If this story touched you, don't forget to subscribe for more emotional romance every week. Hit like, drop a comment, and ring the bell so you never miss a moment of betrayal, redemption, and powerful love. And don't keep the drama to yourself. Share this story with someone who lives for twists just like you. Thanks for listening, and remember, sometimes the best revenge is becoming unforgettable.